The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki. Picture this. It's 1906, and there's this crusty old British scientist named Francis Galton wandering through a country fair. Now, Galton was 85 years old and pretty famous for his work, but he also had a not-so-charming habit of thinking most people were idiots. He literally wrote about how the stupidity and wrong-headedness of ordinary folks was scarcely credible. Yeah, he was a real treat at parties. So there he is, measuring stick probably in hand, when he stumbles across something interesting. There's this massive ox on display, and people are lining up to guess its weight after it's been slaughtered and dressed. Anyone could play for a small fee. The closest guess wins a prize. Now Galton's eyes light up. This is perfect. Nearly 800 people are playing this game, and it's a total mixed bag. You've got your butchers and farmers who actually know their stuff, and then you've got your random fairgoers who probably couldn't tell an ox from a really large dog. To Galton, this was basically democracy in a nutshell. Everyone gets a say, whether they know what they're talking about or not. And he was absolutely certain the crowd would get it hilariously wrong. So the contest ends, and Galton, being Galton, borrows all the tickets and starts crunching numbers. He adds up all 787 readable guesses and calculates the average, one single number representing what this motley crew of Plymouth collectively thought. The crowd guessed 197 pounds. The actual weight, 198 pounds. Off by 1 pound, 1 single pound. Galton was floored. This man who'd built his entire worldview around the idea that only a select, well-bred few should be trusted, was staring at proof that the crowd had nailed it. He later wrote that the result was more credible to the trustworthiness of a democratic judgment than might have been expected. Talk about a grudging admission. This shocking little experiment is the beating heart of James Surowiecki's fascinating book, The Wisdom of Crowds. And once you understand the principle at work here, it'll completely change how you think about everything from stock markets to how you should make decisions in your own life. By the time we're done today, you'll understand the 4 secret ingredients that turn ordinary groups into collective geniuses. You'll see why hunting for the expert can actually lead you astray, and why the smartest answer often comes from asking the entire room, not just the person with the fanciest credentials. That ox story sounds like a fluke, right? Just a lucky coincidence. But Surowiecki spends his entire book showing us this isn't luck at all. It's a fundamental principle of how intelligence emerges when you bring minds together, and it's happening around us constantly. Remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? When contestants got stuck, they had 2 main lifelines. They could call a friend, someone they'd handpicked as one of the smartest people they knew, or they could ask the studio audience to vote. Everything in our culture screams, trust the expert. And the experts did pretty well, getting it right about 65% of the time. But the audience? That random collection of people who'd just shown up hoping to see someone win money? They were right 91% of the time. Week after week, the crowd demolished the individual expert. And this isn't just for game shows. It works for genuinely terrifying high-stakes problems. In May 1968, the submarine Scorpion vanished somewhere in the North Atlantic. The Navy knew roughly where it had last been, but that still left them with a search area 20 miles wide and thousands of feet deep. Finding it seemed nearly impossible. The obvious move would be to gather your top submarine experts and ask them where to look. But a naval officer named John Craven had a different idea. He pulled together a diverse group: mathematicians, submarine specialists, salvage experts. And he didn't make them debate until they agreed. Instead, he had each person privately give their best guess about a series of questions. Why did it sink? How fast was it traveling? What angle did it go down at? He even turned it into a betting game, with bottles of Chivas Regal as prizes. Nobody had the answer. Not a single person knew where the Scorpion was. But Craven took all these independent guesses and ran them through a mathematical formula. He created one spot on the map that represented the group's collective judgment. Here's the wild part. That final location wasn't a spot any individual had chosen. It was truly a group answer. 5 months later, when they finally found the wreckage, it was just 220 yards from where Craven's crowd wisdom formula said it would be. No one knew where the submarine was, but the group knew. So what's actually happening here? Surowiecki explains that the wisdom of crowds isn't magic. It only works under very specific conditions. Get those conditions right, and you get brilliance. Get them wrong, and your crowd becomes a mob. The book breaks down problems into 3 main types. The first is called a cognition problem. These are questions with a definite right answer, even if it's really hard to find. What does this ox weigh? Where's this submarine? Who's going to win the election? All cognition problems. And one of the most powerful cognition machines ever built is the stock market. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded just 74 seconds after launch. It was a national tragedy, broadcast live. Within minutes, investors started dumping stocks of the 4 major contractors involved in the launch. Rockwell, Lockheed, and Martin Marietta all dropped, but bounced back a bit, ending down only about 3%. But the 4th company, Morton Thiokol, which made the solid fuel booster rockets, got hammered. So many people tried to sell that trading had to stop. By day's end, Thiokol was down nearly 12%. The market was pointing a finger. It was saying, that's the company responsible. And this was when nobody officially knew what had caused the disaster. The New York Times literally reported there were no clues to the cause. Yet 6 months later, the Presidential Commission confirmed it. Faulty O-ring seals on Thiokol's booster rockets. Somehow, thousands of investors, most with no inside information, had collectively identified the exact cause within half an hour. This brings us to the secret recipe. For a group to be smart, it needs 4 key conditions. First, diversity of opinion. You need people with different perspectives, different experiences, different information. Surowiecki uses the early auto industry as a perfect example. At the turn of the 20th century, there wasn't one vision of what a car should be. Hundreds of companies were making cars powered by gasoline, steam, even electricity. Thomas Edison was working on a battery car. It was complete chaos. Sounds inefficient, right? Why not just have the smartest engineers design the best car from the start? The book compares this to how bees find nectar. The hive doesn't hold a meeting to decide where the flowers are. It sends out thousands of scouts in every direction. Most find nothing. But some find nectar and come back doing a waggle dance to show the others where to go. The better the nectar, the more enthusiastic the dance. That's how innovation works best. Those early car makers were scout bees, exploring every possibility. The market, the crowd of consumers, eventually chose the winners. The chaos wasn't a bug, it was the feature. Diversity created options, and then the crowd picked the best one. Diversity also protects against groupthink. When everyone in a group is too similar, same background, same worldview, they can easily convince themselves they're right when they're dead wrong. The classic case is the Bay of Pigs invasion. President Kennedy's team, supposedly some of the brightest minds in the country, planned a catastrophic invasion of Cuba. They never consulted the CIA's intelligence branch or the State Department's Cuba experts. Dissent was silenced not through censorship, but through conformity. Everyone was too similar, and they became collectively stupid. A little diversity would have saved them. The second condition is independence. This might be the most important. People's opinions shouldn't be swayed by those around them. Everyone should think for themselves, relying on their own private information, however quirky it might be. Why does this matter so much? Because independence keeps errors from piling up in the same direction. One person guesses too high, another guesses too low. Average them out. and the errors cancel. But if everyone's copying each other, they all make the same mistake. The errors compound instead of canceling. We see this with NFL coaches and fourth down decisions. For decades, coaches have been ridiculously conservative. Conventional wisdom says take the points when you can, so they almost always kick. But is this smart? An economist named David Romer analyzed 700 games and found that statistically, teams should go for it way more often. In many situations, especially near midfield, going for the first down has much higher expected value. So why do expert coaches, whose jobs depend on winning, consistently make the wrong call? Not because they're dumb, because they're imitating each other. Nobody wants to be the coach who goes for it, fails, and looks like a reckless idiot. It's safer to fail conventionally than succeed unconventionally. Their errors all point in the same cautious direction, making them collectively dumber. Sometimes this herd mentality creates what's called an information cascade. People start ignoring their own information and just copy what others are doing. Take plank road fever in 19th century America. Roads were muddy disasters. Then an engineer named George Geddes introduced plank roads, literally wooden planks covering roads, which had worked in Canada. The first one in New York was a huge success, and the idea spread like wildfire. Within a decade, over 1,000 plank road companies popped up. But there was a fatal flaw. The roads rotted in about 4 years, not the promised 8, making them financial disasters. Why did so many people build them? Because each new road seemed like proof the idea worked. Eventually, it became easier to just say, everyone else is building them, they must know something I don't. People made decisions based not on what they knew, but on what they thought others knew. The crowd became a chain of uninformed choices, and tons of money got wasted on roads that turned to mush. That's what happens when independence dies. The third condition is decentralization. People need to draw on local, specific knowledge. Power shouldn't be concentrated at the top. The person closest to a problem often has the best information about it. The intelligence community's failure before September 11th shows what happens when decentralization goes wrong. The U.S. has this vast network: CIA, NSA, FBI, and others. That should be a strength. Each has specialized knowledge. But the problem was there was no good way to put all those pieces together. The system was decentralized, but missing the fourth ingredient. That's aggregation. You need some mechanism to turn private judgments into one collective decision. For the Ox contest, aggregation was simple. Galton added the guesses and divided. In the stock market, its price, constantly updated to reflect millions of judgments. For intelligence before 9/11, there was no effective aggregation. Lots of decentralized information, but no way to assemble it. A brilliant example that combines both is Linux, the open-source operating system. Unlike Windows, built by Microsoft employees behind closed doors, Linux is built by thousands of volunteer programmers worldwide, completely decentralized. Someone finds a bug, someone else has an idea for a feature. Sounds like chaos, right? But it works because there's aggregation. A small group of senior coders, led by creator Linus Torvalds, reviews every potential change and decides what makes it into the official version. Decentralization provides a massive pool of ideas. Aggregation filters them and produces one coherent, incredibly robust product. So we've got our 4 conditions: diversity, independence, decentralization, and aggregation. But this framework also shows us when crowds go mad. Stock market bubbles are perfect examples. Take the bowling alley bubble of the late 1950s. The automatic pin setter transformed bowling from a sketchy pastime into wholesome family fun, and its popularity exploded. Wall Street went nuts. Bowling equipment stocks like AMF and Brunswick soared. Analysts predicted every American would soon be bowling for hours weekly. Investors poured billions in. What happened? The conditions for wisdom broke down. Independence vanished. People weren't buying bowling stocks because of careful analysis. They were buying because everyone else was buying, and prices kept rising. Diversity disappeared, replaced by one belief: bowling is the future. The economist John Maynard Keynes described this with a brilliant analogy: a newspaper beauty contest. The goal isn't to pick who you find prettiest. It's to pick who you think most others will find prettiest. You're not judging contestants, you're judging judges. In a bubble, investors stop figuring out what companies are actually worth. They just guess what others will pay tomorrow. It's self-fulfilling prophecy until suddenly it isn't. The bowling bubble popped, stocks crashed, and lots of people lost lots of money. The wise crowd had become a foolish mob. So cognition problems are about finding right answers. But what about when there isn't one right answer? That brings us to coordination problems. This is about getting people to coordinate their behavior, knowing everyone else is trying to do the same. Think about walking down a crowded sidewalk. It's a spontaneous miracle. Without traffic lights or designated lanes, thousands of people move quickly and efficiently, making thousands of tiny adjustments to avoid collisions. They signal intentions with the subtlest movements. Nobody's in charge, yet it all works. Traffic, on the other hand, is often a spectacular coordination failure. On crowded highways, each driver follows simple rules. Don't hit the car ahead, go as fast as you can, but the collective result is gridlock. Why? Because feedback between drivers is crude, just brake lights and signals. One overcautious driver hitting their brakes can send a wave of braking backward for miles, creating a phantom jam with no apparent cause. The system's too rigid and communication too poor for smart coordination. Sometimes coordination happens in seemingly impossible situations. Economist Thomas Schelling ran an experiment. If you had to meet a stranger in New York City on a specific day but couldn't communicate beforehand, where and when would you go? Seems unsolvable, yet most people gave the same answer: under the clock at Grand Central Station at noon. Grand Central at noon is what Schelling called a focal point, a solution that feels natural because it has prominence in shared culture. Without talking, people coordinate because they know everyone else is solving the same problem and will likely pick the same obvious solution. The final category is cooperation problems, getting self-interested, often distrustful people to work together for the common good, even when it seems rational not to. Paying taxes is the ultimate cooperation problem. We all benefit from roads, schools, and defense that taxes fund, but we get those benefits whether we pay or not. So the purely rational, selfish move is to not pay and free ride on everyone else's contributions. If everyone did that, there'd be no public goods at all. So why do most people pay taxes? Not just fear of getting caught. Audit rates are incredibly low. The answer is trust and fairness. Behavioral economists use the ultimatum game to show this. Two strangers get $10 to split. The first person decides the split could be 50-50, or they could offer just $1 and keep 9. The second person can accept, and they both get money, or reject it, and neither gets anything. A purely rational responder should accept any offer because $1 beats 0. Knowing this, a rational proposer should offer the minimum, but that's not what happens. Lowball offers get rejected. People would rather get nothing than let someone get away with an unfair deal. We're hardwired for fairness and willing to punish unfairness, even at cost to ourselves. That's why we pay taxes. Most of us are, quote, contingent cooperators. We'll cooperate, but only if we believe most others are too, and that cheaters will likely be caught and punished. We want to do right, but we don't want to be suckers. Trust and fairness are the invisible glue holding cooperative society together. Without them, everything falls apart. So where does this leave us? The book's final thoughts turn to the biggest crowd of all, democracy. Is democracy a wise crowd? Not like the ox contest. Political questions don't usually have one objectively right answer. You can't prove whether a tax cut was the correct policy. But democracy, Surowiecki argues, isn't mainly for solving cognition problems. It's a system for handling coordination and cooperation challenges. How do we live together peacefully? How do we manage conflicting interests for mutual benefit? A healthy democracy teaches compromise and acceptance of loss. It provides a framework where we can trust that even if our side loses, the system endures and will have another chance. It allows constant injection of diverse perspectives and local knowledge. Democratic decisions may not always seem wise in the moment, but the decision to make them democratically, to trust in the long-term judgment emerging from the messy, contentious, beautifully complex interaction of free people, that, Surowiecki suggests, is the truest wisdom of all. As we wrap up this journey through the wisdom of crowds, I keep coming back to that simple image of the country fair. An old scientist, so convinced of his own brilliance, completely humbled by the collective intelligence of ordinary people. What strikes me most about this book is how it challenges one of our deepest beliefs, the myth of the lone genius. We grow up on stories of the brilliant executive, the visionary leader, the expert, with all the answers. We're always, as the book says, chasing the expert. Surowiecki gently but firmly asks us to reconsider. He shows us, story after story, that under the right conditions, the many are consistently smarter than the few. This isn't saying experts don't matter, they absolutely do. They were in the group that found the scorpion and in the crowd guessing the ox's weight. The key is that expertise becomes truly powerful when aggregated with others. Diverse knowledge, not when isolated on a pedestal. This book makes a powerful case for intellectual humility. The smartest person in the room is often the room itself. But it's also a warning. Crowd wisdom isn't guaranteed. It's fragile. It depends on creating an environment where diverse thinking is welcomed, where people feel safe being independent in their judgments, and where mechanisms exist to bring all that insight together. As we saw with groupthink, information cascades, and bubbles, when independence and diversity disappear, wise crowds quickly become foolish mobs. So how can you use this powerful idea in your own life right now? Let me leave you with a few simple, practical thoughts. First, next time you're in a group solving a problem, whether it's a school project, family decision, or work team, become a champion for diverse opinions. Don't just seek consensus. Actively look for dissent. You could even assign someone as devil's advocate, whose job is specifically to challenge the emerging consensus. Remember, one dissenting voice can make the entire group smarter. Second, change how you gather information. If you're leading a team, try getting people's independent, private judgments before group discussion begins. Have everyone write down initial thoughts or estimates anonymously. Aggregate those first. This prevents the first speaker from anchoring the entire conversation and ensures you're getting a true sense of collective thinking. Finally, learn to be skeptical of conventional wisdom. When you hear everybody thinks something, ask yourself, is this a product of independent judgments being aggregated, or just a herd of people imitating each other? The difference is everything. As the NFL coaches showed, expert groups can be collectively wrong for decades, simply because nobody dares break from the pack. That was The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki. We've explored the main ideas today, but I'll be honest, a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful city. The real magic happens when you walk the streets yourself. It's in those quiet reading moments when a story or phrase connects with your own experience unexpectedly. This summary gives you a clear landscape view to help you decide if this journey is for you. If anything we've talked about sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about absorbing information. It's an experience that can genuinely shift how you see the world and the people in it. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new lens for seeing things, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It's the best way to ensure you don't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.